For 8 years, no one bothered me. No neighbors, no rules, no HOA letters. Just my land, my cabin, and a quiet life completely off the grid. That's why the envelope didn't make sense at first until I opened it. Inside was a demand for $47,000 in unpaid HOA dues from an association I had never joined, never signed for, and didn't even know existed. At first, I thought it was a mistake. But then the second letter came, and this time, it wasn't a request. It was a warning. So how does an HOA claim power over land that was never theirs to begin with? For nearly a decade, life followed a rhythm that didn't depend on anyone else. The land sat far enough from the nearest town that noise never carried that far. Morning started with quiet, real quiet, the kind that wasn't broken by traffic or distant construction, just wind moving through trees and the occasional sound of wildlife somewhere beyond the clearing. The cabin itself wasn't anything extravagant, but it didn't need to be. It was built slowly, piece by piece, over time. Every board, every repair, every improvement came from effort, not convenience. There were no streetlights, no sidewalks, no neighbors close enough to complain about anything. And that was the point. Living off-grid wasn't just about avoiding utility bills or disconnecting from the system. It was about control, the ability to decide how things worked without interference. Solar panels handled power, a well-supplied water. Even the driveway, long and uneven, felt like a barrier separating that life from everything else. Most people would have called it isolated, but it didn't feel that way. It felt stable, predictable, earned. Occasionally, someone would pass through the area, hunters during certain seasons or hikers who wandered a little farther than planned. But those moments were brief. No one stayed long. No one asked questions. And no one ever tried to tell anyone else how to live out there. At least, not at first. The nearest sign of structured community was miles away, a developing neighborhood slowly expanding along the edge of the main road leading toward town. It had started small, a handful of houses at first, then more. New construction, paved roads, identical mailboxes lined up in neat rows. From a distance, it looked organized, but distant enough that it didn't matter. Or at least, it didn't seem like it would. Over time, though, small changes started becoming noticeable. More traffic on the road leading in. Construction equipment moving in and out. Utility lines extending farther than they used to. The area was growing, even if the cabin remained just outside of it. Still, the boundary felt clear. Different land, different rules. Or so it seemed. The first sign that something had changed didn't come with an official notice. It came as something easy to ignore. A vehicle parked farther down the access road than usual. Not close enough to be a problem. Not unusual enough to raise immediate concern. Just there. At the time, it didn't mean anything. But then it happened again. And then again. The same type of vehicle. Slowing near the property. Occasionally stopping. Never approaching the cabin directly, but never passing through quickly either. It felt like observation. Quiet. Indirect. Intentional. Still, nothing happened. No letters. No contact. No explanation. Just time passing as it always had. Until the day the envelope arrived. It didn't come through any official channel that made sense. No familiar markings. No local sender. Just a standard envelope, addressed correctly, placed where it would be found. That alone was enough to feel out of place. Because nothing ever arrived out there unless it was expected. Opening it didn't feel urgent at first. Just curiosity. But that changed quickly. The contents didn't read like a mistake. They read like something formal, structured, confident, language referencing property compliance, community regulations, membership obligations. None of it matched reality. None of it made sense. Because as far as anyone out there knew, there was no community to be part of, no association to answer to, no agreement that had ever been signed. At first, the assumption was simple. Wrong address. Clerical error. Something that would be corrected as soon as someone realized the mistake. But there was something about the wording that didn't sit right. It didn't ask questions. It didn't suggest uncertainty. It stated things as fact, as if decisions had already been made, as if the situation had already been defined without any input. That was the part that lingered, because mistakes usually come with room to fix them. This didn't feel like that. Still, the letter was set aside. Not ignored completely, but not treated as urgent either. Because out there, urgency usually had a reason, and this didn't seem to have one. At least, not yet. A few days passed. Then another envelope appeared. Same placement, same style, but this time the tone had shifted. The language was sharper, more direct, less explanation, more demand. And suddenly, the situation didn't feel like a misunderstanding anymore. It felt like the beginning of something else. Something that didn't belong out there. Something that didn't follow the same rules as everything else had for the past 8 years. And for the first time since building that life, the quiet didn't feel as certain as it used to. At first, ignoring it felt like the easiest option. The land had always been separate. Physically, legally, and practically. There were no shared roads, no shared utilities, no visible connection to the developing neighborhood miles away. Whatever this was, it didn't belong out there. So the letters were set aside, until they stopped being just letters. The third envelope arrived less than a week later. This time, it was thicker. Inside, the language had escalated. What had once sounded like a misunderstanding now read like a formal claim. Pages outlined outstanding dues, accumulated penalties, and non-compliance with community regulations. The total amount was printed clearly near the bottom. $47,000. Not a suggestion, not an estimate, a demand. And beneath it, a deadline. The shift was immediate. What had been confusing was now aggressive. What had been ignorable was now pressing. Because the number changed everything. No one sends a bill like that by accident. The instinct was to find clarity. Maps were pulled out. Property boundaries reviewed. Old purchase documents checked again, line by line. Every detail confirmed what had always been known. The land wasn't part of any subdivision. It wasn't tied to any development. There was no record of an HOA agreement anywhere in the paperwork. Nothing connected. And yet the letters continued to act like everything already had. That's when the first real attempt was made to respond. A number listed at the bottom of the notice led to a voicemail system. Messages were left, clear, direct, asking for explanation. Days passed before anything came back. When it did, it wasn't helpful. The response didn't address the confusion. It didn't acknowledge the possibility of error. It simply repeated the claim. The property, according to their records, was within the association's jurisdiction. The dues were valid. The balance remained unpaid. And the deadline still stood. It felt like talking to something that wasn't listening. The third envelope arrived less than a week later. This time, it was thick